Hey everybody, it's me, Undead Viking. I'm here to talk to you about a role-playing game, actually, that is going to be in Kickstarter very, very shortly, if it isn't already at this present moment. The name of the role-playing game is called Faith, and it is a sci-fi based role-playing game. Now, when I was contacted by the designer of the game and the publisher, and they asked me if I'd be interested in doing this, I was actually interested, like, from the get-go, mostly due to the fact that I've played a lot of fantasy role-playing games, tons and tons and tons. I'm not going to bother listing them all off. But for whatever reason, the whole sci-fi aspect of role-playing games had kind of eluded me. I played a few, like, Traveler and Paranoia, which, is more of a comedy role-playing game. Some GURPS Space, Cyberpunk, is that sci-fi? Kind of, maybe. And in the same genre, is Shadowrun really sci-fi? I mean, I played a lot of Shadowrun, actually. But mostly, it had been played like at conventions or like as like something that we kind of tried to play as a gaming group. I've had the same gaming group for a long time. And then we just kind of peter out and we just go back to like a fantasy-based role-playing game, which is not bad. It's just we never really got a good sci-fi game going. And I was kind of disappointed in that. And so when they described the game to me and they described how it's played and the different aspects of it, I got excited about it, and I asked them to send me a copy of what they had, which, this is a prototype. There's not a lot of art, and some of the components, like as far as the little tokens and stuff like that, won't fit exactly what the game is going to look like when it gets published, but just kind of bear with me as far as that's concerned. And we goofed around with it, we played it, and we had some fun with it, and we really liked a lot of aspects of it. I mean, the ease of play, the fairly simple rule set, and mostly it adopts a mentality that has been gaining ground lately with role-playing games, and I appreciate this. The removal of the we're getting away from the crunchy numbers, if you will. Like, every single thing that you do has a stat, it has a die roll, and it has a goal. And like, did you fail, did you succeed, go, okay, whatever. And the first game that really brought like kind of an alternate world to that is like Dungeon World for me. It was like this kind of always failing forward kind of mentality. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I will talk about that again. Like 13th Age is another system that uses that. And so this is a system that is all card-based. Each player has a deck of cards, a deck of 54 cards. It's a poker deck, and you can even use a poker deck if you want. But you then have a character who has different abilities and powers, and it has skills and equipment, and basically you start telling a story. And, just like any other role-playing game, the game master comes up with you and your compatriots are on a ship that's headed towards this planet, and you're looking for this one gentleman. You've got a bounty on him. Something as expansive or as small as you wanted to. And then you begin the story, and each of you, and the GM obviously, as with any role-playing game, tells the story, explains what's going on, and introduces the environment, introduces the NPCs, and then the players, instead of just letting the story, the movie just happen in front of them and then reacting, they actually immerse themselves into the situation and start affecting it and start adjusting the dials and the knobs and whatever. And I like that. I like that mentality, and it kind of goes against like a lot of the stuff that's ingrained within my group and myself as far as how we play. But I think when you open yourself up to that idea, then it works. Now, you might know what I mean, but just perfect example, we had a session, I was running it, and I just, in a situation they're on this like this populated town, and they needed information about how to get into this bank vault or whatever. And so one of the players just said, hey, in my background, I said that I was originally a financial planner for all these different companies. I bet you I have somebody that I know that has invested or has worked, with this bank at some point. I'm sure I can contact them and they can give me some info or whatever. Now, I hadn't even thought of that, and just like, okay, but did it make sense? Yeah, it totally made sense. You know, so sure, yeah, okay, yeah. Then we role played that out, and sure enough, and then we add that character into that. We add that NPC, and here's, you know, this person that he worked with before, and just happens to be on the planet, and we have this interaction, and then it adds that other level, and that person then gets to add that to their character, and to their background, and to their creation, and you know, and it's a fun way to play the game, and that's like one of the aspects of it that I really like. I don't really have a lot of stuff to show you. I'm going to show you the core mechanism of the game, which is the card play for confrontations, is what they're called. And confrontations are just, could be like, I'm trying to shoot somebody with a gun, to I'm trying to hack into a vault, or even, you know, as they say in the rules, it's playing the piano. It's something that your character is trying to do and they're trying to succeed at. And in a lot of cases, it'll just work. If it just makes sense that your character can do it, then fine, you can go ahead. You know, a character that is strong enough to, you know, pick up a chair and throw it through a plate glass window, if there's nobody there stopping it, and the GM says, well, that makes sense, you're strong enough, you can pick that chair up, and it's heavy enough that it's going to go through that window, there, it works. No big deal. You move forward. And I like that. I think we're not bogging the game down in some, okay, now let's see if we roll well enough, we can get through there, you know, that sort of thing. And you know, we get beyond that and we get into the meat, we get into the action right away. But now if, say, that same situation, I'm going to pick up this chair and I'm going to try to throw it through that window, well, if there happens to be some dude that's trying to capture you and he's okay, he's going to try to grab the chair out of your hands and prevent you from doing that. That's when the confrontation actually happens with the GM and the player, and you guys start getting to be able to put down cards that affect you. And basically what that comes down to is that your ability, which is either at the beginning of the game, is going to usually be a 1 or a 2, depending on, like, if it's your agility, your dexterity, your constitution, your mind, link, which is your ability to use technology, or faith, which is actually the whole point of the game, and I'll get to that. Faith is like your faith in the gods of the world. It's just kind of cool. It's a sci-fi world with gods. You then get to, you know, take your skill that you have in that particular, like throwing thing would be athletic skill. You get to take your skill level, which, you know, is usually 1 through 5. It could be 0 if it's untrained, and then you get to add as many cards from your hand as equals the attribute that you are using, and then the GM then can play cards against that, and then whoever ends up with the more positive score will then succeed, and it works. And if, like, and there's different levels of success too. If you get like a 5 or more, it's like a really good success, and if you get 10 or more above, like, the other number, and it is like one of the face cards, which would be, you know, a Jack, Queen, King, or like, you know, 11, 12, 13 or whatever, then it's actually like a critical success. So if it's something like, you know, like in that case, like you're trying to throw the chair through, maybe the critical success would be that, like, you take the chair out of the hand, you smash the guy over the head with it, knocking him out, and then you throw it through the window. You know, or if it's just, or, you know, or as simple, if it's just a gunfight and you're shooting your gun, you know, you get a critical hit. You hit him in the head or hit him in the vital organs, things like that. And so, you know, that's one of the things. And I'm going to show you kind of basically how that works, and show you some of the cards, and show you the player boards and things like that. Actually, why don't we do that right now, and then we'll get back here and I'll talk more about what I've really enjoyed about playing Faith, and you know, maybe I can convince you this is something you want to check out, and then you can go to the Kickstarter and see if you want to back this game and get your own copy. All right, cool. Well, let me show you some of the cards and the things that go on with the game Faith. Of course, before I show you some of the basic mechanisms of Faith, just remember this is the prototype that was sent to me. So what you see as far as the artwork, obviously, like you see these pictures here, they're the silhouettes. The final art hasn't been made yet for the cards, and how this looks won't necessarily look like the game that will be coming out. So there's you can see there's these decks of cards. This is the GM deck. One of the things that the GM gets is that each player will take their jokers out of their deck. I want to actually show you the jokers. They have the little J there, and then they will actually shuffle them into the deck. So because the jokers basically allow the GM to kind of have bad luck happen to the players if that happens. So. But each person will shuffle up their deck in preparation for the session. Now, character creation is pretty simple. Now, I just have these character cards. They're very normally what I understand is the character cards will have a blanks in these locations, and so you can just mix and match which character. But here you have these are the Corvo. They have these Cortex links that allow them. You can see the kind of plug in. They're very corporation minded and also highly technological. Let me find you an Izcall, another human. There we go. That's an Izcall, and you can see they've kind of got this otherworldly look to them, of course, and they're kind of more of the more restrained, and they're both not that the Corvo aren't just like corporate minded. They actually do care, but the idea about the Izcall is that they more have a society mentality, I guess, is a good way of saying it. So anyway, so normally what would happen is that you'd have, and you don't have to use these player cards. They're going to have standard role-playing game paper, sheets of paper, so you can just write these out as well. But when you create a character, what you will do is that you will get attributes, and when you make your attributes will you'll have some of them will be 2, and the rest will be 1, and then with all of these skills down here. And these you don't roll, you just pick these. All those skills, ballistic, initiative, and so on and so forth, fairly straightforward. Like profession is kind of an interesting one, because the higher your profession skill, the more like starting gear you get and stuff like that. And so like things like that actually come in handy. So like when you take profession, you don't just say I have profession 4. You say I'm like a senior vice president of whatever corporation, like a ship making corporation or a defense contractor or something. So you come up with something and you work with the GM to come up with a reason for that. If you're going to be athletic, you could say you are an Olympic class, whatever Space Olympics are or something like that. These are things that you can use to make your character more well-rounded, if you will. But anyway, with these skills, you pick 1 gets to start at level 5, 1 gets to start at level 4, and then 2 at 3, 2 at 2, 3 at 1, and the rest are 0. So some are just untrained. And so you will put little markers on there to designate that. We actually just used pieces of paper when we played, and it worked just fine. These blanks over here are for when you get advantages or improvements, if you will, and these are things that you can. It's actually, if you played Shadowrun, there's a lot of stuff that are robotic arms or neural implants and things like that you can add to there. And also, if you follow your god, because this is called faith, you're following your god and follow the commandments, you can get faith-based powers and stuff like that, and you just have little from what I understand, you'll have little markers that you'll just place in those locations to show that you have those abilities. And so that's how that works. Now, so just quickly, I'm not going to really go. These are the NPCs, and they're fairly straightforward. Bounty hunter, operative. The stats over here are just for the GM to have, and to know their physical and their mental abilities. So if you're going to fight them, what they do, and it gives you a little bit of information on the back. In close quarter, it has 1 advantage, which is good. It helps you fight, and then does 3 damage if it succeeds. And so things like that are just listed off there. And here's some that actually have the art on them. The harvester, and the art in this game is amazing. The iron skin is some sort of weird creature. It's a rabbit. It gains an advantage for close quarter combat, and it does 3 physical damage with each hit. When it attacks, it must continue to attack or chase that same character until that character is either bleeding out or dead. And so this is just an intelligent, aggressive ravager. I don't know if you can read that. It's kind of tough to read. But yeah, then capable of living in an almost any environment. The Iron Skins are some of the most resilient organic beings across the universe. Definitely one of the genetic design masterpieces of the Ravager. So it's little touches like that that make the game interesting and fun. Now, obviously, this game is, since it is a sci-fi game, the gear is important. So you have, things, adrenaline shots or whatever, but you have suits, you have drones. Here, let me actually find a good, one of these cool pictures. There's obviously, you have weapons. I'm really looking forward to some of the art that I'll have on here. So, weapons, but, a multi-tool glove. It doesn't always just have to be weapons or hacking. Hackers are actually one of the biggest. You use hacking a lot in this game. And it isn't like hacking sitting in front of a keyboard and typing away. You're actually able to use your electronics to at a distance, disrupt other electronics, stuff like that. It's a very, very important part of the game. But here we have a big old gun. It's like a giant rail gun. It has all these different stats. The magazine has one shot, and so then it actually has these things of what kind of damage it'll do, when you use it, and also on the back, of course, it gives you some mechanics or whatever. So bipod takes an action to set up or take down, and then with the railgun scope, it extends to 300 meters. Just some basic mechanics as far as how the gun works, and then of course some interesting little knowledge there. Now, the most common mechanic that is going to be used in the entire game is the confrontation. And at the beginning of the session, you draw 7 cards. If you're human, you get 8. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And anytime you want to do something as a player, you have your cards here. And then you're going to play these, and the higher the better, obviously, so you have a 12 in there. The higher the better. And you'll notice that there are these little symbols here. That's technology, that's space. Let me see if we got that's in a city. And so I don't think we got an urban one. Let me see if I can find one that just is the urban. There you go. And that is the urban signal. And so if you use a card in a setting, so if you are having a gun battle in a city and you use this, you get a bonus for doing that. If you're piloting a spaceship in outer space, you get a bonus for using this card. Things like that. It's called the affinity bonus. But regardless, the most basic situation of the game is that you are going to take actions, and sometimes if there's an NPC, the GM will use that as the reason why they get to play cards against you in that situation. Sometimes you might even have a PC that might go against what you want to do, and they will play cards as well. But when you decide to play a card for taking an action, like you're going to shoot at an enemy, you're going to shoot at this Iron Skin with your gun, you look through your cards, you'd find one, it's well, I want to make sure I hit it, and you put the card down like so. And the GM at that point has the option, they have a hand of cards as well. And the interesting thing is, I'm not saying that the GM in these situations, the GM is there to propel the story and to keep things moving and to make things interesting. But they also obviously, as with any other game, they have to represent what the being is doing, or they have to be representative of the world. They can't fudge in favor of you. But the but to that is that they're trying to make the story interesting, and so are the players. Because it would be really boring if you didn't have anything to fight against, right? So you have a situation now where they will play a card to play against you, and so looking at the cards, and the interesting thing is that if you can show that you have certain advantages in the situation, the GM will allow that to happen. They'll say, yes, okay, you have an advantage in this, so you get a bonus. But most of the time, if almost always somebody's going to be at advantage, somebody's going to be disadvantage. But regardless, what you do is that the GM always starts out at 0. The players will start out at their skill level plus whatever cards they play. And so sometimes they won't even play cards, because then a lot of times they won't. They'll just say, I'm going to drive the space car over there. Okay, well, there's nothing preventing you from doing that, so you don't really have to worry about it. They have they have the ability of piloting of 2, so it's a positive number. They're going to succeed. The vast majority of any possible confrontation in Faith is that you succeed, or the players, it works. But in the situation where it doesn't, that's when the GM will say, well, I'm going to play a card. And then that forces the player to play cards themselves. And if ultimately it's just the skill level of the person that is doing what they're doing, plus the cards they play, minus the cards that the GM plays, you or whatever, like other players or whoever is going against them in the confrontation, if you still have a positive number, you succeed. You shoot the creature, you do the damage that your weapon does. You successfully pilot the space car through heavy traffic. You manage to climb the side of the skyscraper, things like that. If you fail, obviously something like, bad happens. Now, if it's something where it isn't necessarily something like super bad. You don't fall to your doom, when you're climbing up the side of the skyscraper. It might be something where you wrench your shoulder and you take a point of physical damage, and then you have to worry about somebody has to come and save you, maybe. Or if you're fighting, it could be something as simple as missing the item, or if it's like a really bad failure, then maybe the gun jams and you got it repaired or things like that. And so, depending on how positive or how negative the result is with the the result as far as the confrontation, that is where then the GM and the players can come up with something together that forwards the story. It isn't just a flat out, yeah, you do this, that's what happens. It is something where it inspires the players, everybody, including the game master and the people that are playing as the player characters. It inspires them to keep that narrative going and helps a great deal with the immersion in the game. So that's the really straightforward and very, very simple mechanism of the game. You're going to be using these cards for everything. You don't have any dice in this game. You don't have any random damage in this game or anything like that. It's just you and the other players coming up with the good story, coming up with the interactions, coming up with the conversations and the actions and whatever with the GM, and using the cards in your deck and in your hand to facilitate that. So there you go. That's what I don't have a rule book, I'm sorry, to show you, but that is the basics of Faith, the sci-fi RPG. Let me tell you a little bit more about why my friends and I have really been having a lot of fun with this. Alright, thanks. As I said, I didn't have a lot to show you, and I'm sorry that I don't. I don't have a big book to show you or anything like that. I don't have like a big like a giant portfolio of art or whatever, but the game looks amazing, and and like I said, the game world is really interesting too. And let me tell you a little bit about the game world. Basically, there's 3 races. You can be humans, which are almost extinct. Basically, the planet there, the Earth, has been just mined for resources, and they were just a casualty of that action. And then there's 2 other races, and that's the Corvo and the Iltar. And basically, the former are a very highly technological race that they kind of like have these like basically links into like cybernetics, if you will, for lack of a better term, and they use those to enhance their abilities and what have you. The latter are kind of like this more, I mean, I don't want to say elves, but they're kind of slighter in build, and they have this weird like hive mind link ability. They work really hard on like controlling their emotions and not allowing themselves to act inappropriately, if you will, and so then of course humans are just kind of the grab bag, and like I said, that there's not many of them left. So if you are a human, you're kind of a weird little oddity. Now these 2 races, the Corvo and the Iltar, they are not so much at war as they are like in a Cold War. They're both working against each other. They can't actually fight each other because they just obliterate each other if they did that. So they can't outwardly do that, but they can just kind of subversively try to weaken each other economically, politically, and try to like undermine their authority. Think, I mean, for lack of a better term, think like the Shadowrun world of the Megacorps. You know, they can't really fight each other head to head just because, you know, they would weaken themselves too much, and then even if they won, and then somebody would step in and destroy them. So all in all, then what's left there is you have the PCs, who then, I mean, if the, and that's the cool thing about the world, is that the whole world is like this weird, they have access to wormholes, and which they call the maze, and you can travel through the wormhole, and you can, but you don't know exactly where you're going to end up. And so I like that open-ended thing. You can have a situation where, yeah, if you want to have a campaign that is all about, you know, working for one of the races, then working for the other, and, you know, working against each other, and like seeing, like trying to amass wealth or power or whatever it is your personal goal is, you can go that route. If the GM doesn't and just wants you to go through a wormhole and then create some crazy world on the fly that you end up at, you know, with you know, some new crazy race or some crazy otherworldly creature or dimension or whatever, you know, your mind can just go crazy. And that's one of the great things about having a sci-fi world, is you really can do anything with it. And that's one of the cool things about Faith, is that they kind of allow you to go off and do that. The last thing I'm going to talk about really quickly, you know, besides the whole concept of like the failing forward, and just like the GM and the players working together to create a fun story that you're telling. There's actually two things. Leveling up is really cool. You have to go through your entire deck, and once you get through your entire deck, before you get to shuffle up your deck and and get ready to go again, one of two things happen. Basically, the players and the GM decide what your character did and how well they did, and what were some memorable things they did while during that session as they were getting through their cards that they had in their hand. And as a group, they decide what you get to level up as. They decide, it's like, well, you know what, you really did really well when you were hacking into that one system, so we're going to give you a bonus to those skills, you know, for that. Or, you know, you really saved our lives with, you know, when you were able to go off and find, you know, that resource or whatever, you know, so we're going to get you a bonus to your survival, you know. And so they decide that, and then your character improves like that. So it spawns that kind of nice, like, group-oriented mentality, which I like. Then when you actually like shuffle up and get ready to go, you get 2 experience points, which then can be used to purchase different advantages or different you know, powers and what have you, which then allows you to kind of like, you know, grow your character and build them into this thing that they want. Now, last thing I'm going to talk about, because it's Faith, and it's about the gods. Now, the gods are like, you know, they actually take like kind of an active role in the player characters' lives. They each of them have commandments that you have to follow. If you follow those commandments and you do well for your god will give you religious advantages, powers that are beyond the normal ken of man, if you will. And those are extremely powerful and very valuable advantages that you can have. When you break those commandments, you will then, of course, lose those. And if you like, and you will take time for those to come back to you. If you like really do bad, your god can just cut you off, and then at that point, like, you don't get any advantage from them whatsoever. Now, you can actually spin that into a role-playing situation where you could like switch from one god and start following another god through like some wonderful moment of role-playing. And we haven't had one happen, but they give a really good example in the rules of basically a person that worships this god that is just like, you know, it's like, you know, save yourself first, you know, just like make sure that you survive. But if that player then instead like put themselves in harm's way, and like, you know, to like, you know, the last stand with the gun, you know, and told everybody else to run and saved everybody else and nearly died in the attempt, or, you know, and had to, you know, or maybe they died and they were brought back, you know, then their god would like abandon them because like, well, what are you doing? You know, you're not. But then you'd switch to the protector god, and then you'd have no, you wouldn't like experience any loss of power due to this kind of fairly epic thing that you enveloped. And the way, and the fact that the gods take such an active role in the lives of the PCs really adds a lot to the game, and it adds that extra level of like character. You know, it's one thing for players to come up with their role playing ideas and what their goals are, and whatever. But it really helps a lot if like you have a system, in my opinion, and like 13th Age does this really well too. They have the icons in that one, and but this one you have these gods and they're actively there, and it isn't just some like, you know, weird spiritual being, you know, letting you have cure light wound spells every day. This is somebody that's actually taking an active interest in your players' lives, and it's a wonderful thing that the GM and the players can all use to further that story and to further the enjoyment of the game. So for all those reasons I talked about, you know, especially like I said during the gameplay portion, just the ease of use. No dice, no nothing. It's just like the action's fast and everybody's involved and everybody's talking. For all those reasons, my gaming group has really enjoyed Faith, and I'm excited to see what the game will look like once it gets published, and see all the final art and see all the final supplements and everything else that they're planning. So there you go. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions about Faith, the sci-fi RPG, I'll be more than happy to answer those to the best of my ability. And as always, until the next time, you have yourself one heck of an awesome day. All right, bye-bye.